Thank you all for coming. Frankly, didn't expect to see anybody here tonight because of the football and baseball games, but I do appreciate everyone coming out. I try to keep these meetings pretty short and sweet, so generally about an hour. We'll stay as long as there are questions. Tonight, we're going to follow the format that we've followed ever since starting these things, it seems like a year ago. And that is, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction, and then we find this works best if I take questions, and that way I can make sure that I cover the things that are important. One thing I do want to point out to you from the very beginning, don't get anything else out of this. If you have any questions at all, pick up one of these brochures that's in the back, and you'll see on the bottom of the back page are really good contact numbers. There's email and phone. If we don't get something answered, we'll just contact us through one of those mechanisms. We'll be sure to get the information to you. I want to acknowledge Deputy Mayor Clark, who is here. We have Councilmember Lucy Kodiak, and I think those are all our best elected officials here tonight. So again, I'm just going to kind of touch on the highlights and the things that we know people are very interested in, and then we'll go into any questions. I'm going to ask Chief Kimmer, who's our police chief, here to answer the questions about police. There are always some questions about that. So, is that satisfied with you? So, the city of Burien is currently a city of about 47,000. So, we've concluded one annexation in 2010. The annexation we're contemplating of the area, generally called Area Y, but includes White Center, Top Hat. It would add about 17 or 18 or 19,000 people, depending on how you count it. So after annexation, if annexation was successful, Burien would be a city of about 65,000. That would make us the 15th largest city in the state. The state has 281 cities. There are a few areas that invariably come up, and Mr. Easton already asked me about them this evening, and they are our taxes. What happens to our taxes? The average property owner will see their taxes and fees go up about $140 a year. So the unincorporated area doesn't have a property tax per se. They have a road tax. It's slightly higher than our property tax, but we have some fees and some utility costs and things like that nature. They kind of average it out. Everybody belongs to different special districts. There are no less than 6 special districts in Burien, and depending on the special district, that will affect the way your tax or fees are paid. But on average, everybody for an average house will pay about $140 a year more. You may or may not have seen figures out there of 3, 4, 5, 6 times that amount. They're wrong. They're flat wrong. It's disinformation. They're a little solid. This is the correct number. Game over. The cost of business generally comes up. Well, before that, many people are interested to know if their house or their property, their business is going to be rezoned in some way that's detrimental. So we always get questions about how the zoning works. And we have a fair amount of experience in this. We just got through our first annexation, and we would handle area of Wire, the White Center area, in the same fashion, which is to say we wouldn't do anything for the first year. The first year, in the first annexation, we went up into the community, we had community meetings, we talked to them, we found out what they were interested in, what they thought was appropriate, and then we zoned it that way as best we could. I can point out particularly the en bloc corridor was potentially very highly contentious because the city of Burien has a zoning that allows a maximum of 24 units per acre, so your apartment building, while the county has a maximum zoning of 48 units per acre, a bigger apartment building. And we had some issues there where there was property zoned R48, so there was a concern that we were going to come in and zone it all, down zone it to R24. We didn't do that. We found ways to make that work, parcel by parcel, property by property. So we really do our best to try to accommodate what's on the ground. It's not in our best interest. You can just think about it. Go up there and start moving all the pieces around, dividing the property and that sort of thing. Just doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. Conversely, we also hear people say, well, we've heard that is going to annex, and my house that's currently worth $300,000 in the property in the county, you're going to evaluate at $600,000 should be left in their property taxes. And we heard this for the first couple of meetings, and the answer is we don't have the authority. We don't go around and assess property. That's not our business. So again, the zoning is going to stay pretty much as it is now, and I'll reiterate that I'm sure you've seen all kinds of numbers out there, $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 in increased property tax or taxes and fees. They're just wrong. It's misinformation. It's false. It's $140 for an average property tax for property and fees in the annexation area. I'm going to let Scott Kimmer talk to us about police in just a minute. I'm going to use this brochure as a crib sheet. Make sure I cover some of the things. Can I just get through this and then I'll take a question? We get a lot of questions about who takes over all my services, water, sewer, schools, and the answer is that Burien is kind of, I won't say it's unusual, but we're kind of the poster child for what's called a contract city, which is to say that virtually all of our services, except for a few, are provided by special districts. So water districts, sewer districts, library districts, school districts, etc. We have no less than 5 or 6. Annexation doesn't affect any of that. So if you're in a special district now, for example, water and sewer, they stay the same, they just don't change. So no change on that score. We get lots of questions about septics. Many people are on septics and they're worried that coming into Burien, they're going to be forced into going into not using their septic any longer, and that's not the case. If your septic fails and it can't be repaired, chances are the public health department is going to get involved, and they're going to tell you that you have to do one thing or another. It's not the city that is involved in that. This is we have many people in the city here who are on septics that are operating quite nicely, and as long as they're operating, there's no problem. We get questions about road maintenance. Who takes care of the roads and the alleys and that sort of thing? I'm very proud to say that one of the things that we've started doing in the last several years is having a small but growing public works maintenance group. They're very effective. They're not large. I think we've got 15 guys and 1 gal. But they're very effective. They're a lot more effective than King County was, so we're getting a much clearer bang for our buck. Alleys are, I can't imagine what would cause us to actually maintain an alley because they're so low in priority. We simply don't maintain alleys. We have alleys because we're a very old community. New cities and new neighborhoods generally don't have alleys. A place I spend a lot of time in Port Angeles, all kinds of alleys. And I personally really like alleys, but they're just a very low priority for the city. And we have to prioritize which roads we're going to take care of and which roads we take care of first. We go after the other ones later. How is Burien governed? I should have covered that one first. So we're what's called a council manager form of government. There are 7 elected council members. You just met 2 of them tonight. They set policy for the city. The mayor is elected from among them. The mayor is not elected by the general population. It's just every couple of years the council decides which of the council members will be the mayor, which will be the deputy mayor. They set policy. I'm in charge. The city manager is in charge of the daily operation of the city. So we have a staff of about 70 people, give or take. It grows to a little over 100 during the summer when we have our Parks and Rec programs going, because we have a lot of those. We have a lot of part-timers. We also do a lot of summer road maintenance and that sort of thing. So we expand a little bit during the summer. What is the annexation process? So only the people who are registered voters in the annexation area vote on annexation. The existing residents of Burien do not vote on annexation. So if on November, prior to November 6th, you'll be getting a ballot in the mail, and it'll have a whole bunch of stuff on it. And one of the questions will be asked is whether you favor annexation or not, annexation of Burien. If annexation is successful, then soon after the election, we'll start working with the county on the transition of the area to the city. We'll set a date by which the transition will occur, and then on that date that we all agree on, we'll flip a switch, and one day it'll be in the county, and the next day it'll be in the city of Burien. All the cops instead of wearing green, they're wearing blue, and off we go to the races. I've seen questions come up recently about will I be able to vote for council members? Yes, in 2000, at the very next election in 2013, you can vote for a council member. Further, you can run for council. So people are often confused about what it means to be, become part of the city. Once you're part of the city, you're part of the city. You're governed by the same structure, the same people. You have the same rights as everybody else in the city. So with that, I'll take this gentleman's question, and I'll go to Scott.
Once you break down those taxes you refer about that first there, you say you have four different set of different tax structures, regular, unincorporated for King County.
Yeah, what I said was that the property tax in King County, they have what's called a road tax, and it's generally set at a higher mill rate. We don't have a road tax, we have a property tax. So the road tax is a little bit higher than our property tax, but we have other taxes that are higher.
Such as?
Let's see if I got it. Yeah. So I'll just read this. This is in the literature.
Is that a pamphlet there?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Okay, they're on the back. Yeah. I'll just read them though. The property tax rate will decrease from about $14.07 per thousand to about $13.74 per thousand for a property of 200,000. In Burien, the city levies a 3% utility tax on electric, and a 6% utility tax on cable, gas, garbage, and telephone. This would increase your taxes by about $205. So when you take those two things together, it comes out to about $140 average increase for an average resident. Anything else before we talk to the Chief Giver? Okay.
So I wish I had a new, more exciting speech that I could give you. I've been doing this for a very long time, and so I'm going to give you the same canned speech that I give every single one of these. I have been the Chief of Burien for 9 years. I have been with the King County Sheriff's Office 33 years. I have spent most of the last 17 years in the North High Line Burien area. I have been working on the annexation issue for about 8 years. I'm looking and I can see maybe 2 people that have had as much time working on this as I have. This started with the first city manager, Gary Long. I've been through 2 Burke studies. I've been through the Nesbitt study. We've done all kinds of different iterations of how we wanted to annex this area. I've been through learning all about how annexations occur, about the sales tax incentive, all those kinds of questions. My focus is really just the police department. The police department is a contract with the King County Sheriff's Office. It has been since the inception of Burien, almost 20 years ago. And my part's pretty easy because really not much changes if an annexation takes place. We would take probably most of the people who are currently working as deputies in the North High Line area, and they would come work for me in Burien. It would be a change of uniforms. What it does do, though, is it increases the size of the Burien Police Department. So now there are more resources that can be focused in on different areas. I have a gang unit, I have property detectives, I have undercover narcotics detectives, I have other specialty units that are out there. A question that always seems to come up is, what about the White Center storefront? If we did an annexation here, the White Center storefront officer would stay the White Center storefront officer. I don't know that we would be in the same facility, but he would be the White Center storefront officer. When we did the last annexation down in Boulevard Park, we also kept that storefront officer down there. I think it's a very valuable resource for the community and somebody that really takes ownership about a lot of the day-to-day happenings in the community, so I think that's important. There really isn't much else to say about what happens with the police department. I can tell you from being with the Sheriff's Office as long as I have been that we've had some challenges in the past, especially regarding the King County budget. We have lost roughly 140 commissioned deputies over the last 3.5 years in the Sheriff's Office. That is a reduction of staff in the Sheriff's Office. We have not taken any reductions in the Burien Police Department. The Burien Police Department is completely separate from the standpoint of it is a contract, we have a formula worked out, and the City of Burien pays the King County Sheriff's Office for the services. Those services are dedicated to the city. As you can see, I have Burien shoulder patches, we have Burien marked cars, and we take our direction from the city manager and the city council as far as the priorities of the police and what we do. We answer to them, and we answer to the community as far as their concerns go. The difference with having a contract as opposed to having your own standalone department is I also have the resources of the King County Sheriff's Office, which is a very large agency if necessary. So if you're happy with the King County Sheriff's Office and how they've been policing, it will be the same level of service or better than you receive now. I would say that it would be better level of service just because I now add whatever resources come in from the North Highline area to my department, and now instead of having 2 people that work in North Highline and my 4 or 5 or 6 that are working in Burien, now we have 7 or 8 people that work for the entire city of Burien. So we can concentrate more on areas that we feel we need the resources for. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. I see Mark trying to get his hand up there. Yes, sir.
Scott, okay, so help me understand. I noticed in your 2013 budget, there's a reduction in the King County Sheriff's portion of the budget by $430,000. How is it that the city of Burien can take out almost $500,000 out of the budget, and that won't impact our ability to have coverage at the level that Burien provides? That's the first question. Second question.
Let's do one at a time. Let's do one at a time.
Okay, so the first, to answer your first part of your question, the budget amount that is given to the city of Burien is there are we have to average out salaries. We can't say everybody on the sheriff's department, if you have 5 years on or you have 20 years on, you have a different pay rate. You have different scales there. We generally, as a contract, we average out and we have a certain set amount for what those salaries are paid every year. There's also specialty pays. If you look in the book, if you really examine the contract, it will tell you that there are specialty pays, there's overtime, there are other costs that come in here. At the end of the year, the city of Burien only pays what it's supposed to pay. So if that average, say that the average is $155,000 per officer. If that officer really only costs $140,000, then that $15,000 comes back to the city of Burien. And what you see is called reconciliation. And every year we reconcile the contract to the actual cost that we have laid out. That also means salary savings. So if I have a vacancy for a period of time, then that vacancy creates a salary savings. And at the end of the year, we give them back whatever amount that is. I've averaged somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 a year that I've given back to the city of Burien over what the contract amount is for that year. So your next question.
Okay, and we'll follow up to that question then, though, is that if I was a wealthy man and I wrote the city of Burien $430,000, gave you a check, and I said, I'm going to give you this check for additional police service because it costs $150,000 per officer, and what I'd like is 3 full-time officers walking in downtown White Center. You could allocate that $430,000 or $50,000 to be able to identify 3 additional officers and allocate them for downtown White Center, in addition to BJ and the other officers there, couldn't you?
Well, you could as long as you were willing to pay that $450,000 every year. Because I can't bring an officer in and say, hire an officer, train an officer, and go through the probation period and then maintain that officer on a one-time amount. It's got to be constant.
First of all, not a question relevant to annexation. I think, but to get to the heart of the question, I think the point is that in order to balance the city's budget, that we've taken money that is generally just dumped into the fund balance at the end of the year. There are no less officers because of this. Field strength is not reduced one iota, and if it were present, it would be money that would just go back into the fund balance. Mark, in fairness, is a pretty active, very active anti-annexation proponent. So these are, that's all fair, that's good. I assume some of you are here too. But I feel the need to kind of put this in context. And I think the line of reasoning here, as I was expecting to hear tonight, was that we can't afford to do this. And that's something that I should have mentioned because I hear that come up a lot. That's some additional mention that there is some misinformation out there, whether intentionally or just through ignorance is being spread. One of them is that we can't afford to do this. One of them is that the $5 million sales tax credit that we rely on from the state is simply untrue. It's not going to happen. And so I should back up. This gentleman beforehand asked me, he said, well, why are people interested in annexing this area? And there's many reasons to that, but one of the reasons is that the state in 2009 made a special arrangement to consent either Burien or Seattle to annex this area. And the arrangement was they wrote a special law, it's not even a budget, it's a law, which says whoever annexes this area will be able to claim up to $5 million in state sales tax rebate. And they did that specifically because this area has some issues that need to be dealt with. And they realized that and they said, we're going to help you do that, and that's where the money is going to come from. So often what we hear is, well, that money that's strictly phantom. That's not the case. That's wrong. That's not true at all. The money is there, and we've had numerous professionals look at this. This annexation for the city of Burien is revenue neutral. I'll go a step further and say that a city of 65,000 has more opportunities by its sheer size to do some things that smaller cities can't do, and I expect to see economies of scale. So there's absolutely no question that this annexation is financially viable. There's absolutely no question that we're getting $5 million from the state and game over. But this line of questioning about Burien is going broke, I think you hear that out there sometimes. Burien is in far, far, far greater financial situation than 90% of the cities out there. This year, the council was presented with an option. We can use reserves to balance the budget, or we can raise taxes. And they said, you know what, these are hard times. We're not going to raise taxes, because they could have, and they did. We're going to go to reserves, and we're going to bet that the economy is going to turn around and improve. And so, hooray for them. You know, they listen to the community, which is what they do. And they said, you know, right now, this isn't a good time to raise taxes, so we can do that, totally balance the budget, good to go. We're going to sit on this for a couple of years and see if the economy turns around. And I think that, you know, whether I like it or not, as the city manager, I think that reflects what the community wanted to do. So, hooray for them. Other questions? This week.
So, and this is a lot of good information, basically making the point things will change as far as, you know, what we see every day. How would annexation change things?
So the question was, you just finished explaining this brochure, says how much things don't change, so what in fact changes? This is my favorite question, and this is the one that I really, early on, like a couple of years ago, I had to struggle with this one myself. So yeah, utilities don't change, we get more cops, but basically we maintain the same strength. What changes? So, if you think of what Burien was 20 years ago, and think of what it is today, I will tell you that if Burien had remained unincorporated, it would not be the Burien that it is today, period. What happened in Burien was there was a community that came together and they said, this is what we envision our community to be. It's got a vital downtown, it's safe, it's thriving, people are prospering. And they... So they said, this is what our vision is. And then for 20 years, council after council has pursued that vision. And the reason that Burien is the way it is because the community has had a mechanism to pursue that vision. So the White Center area is, as I said, about 17,000 to 18,000 people. The city of Burien is currently about 47,000 people. 18,000 people being absorbed. Scott, could you take that into the side?
Well, people have questions, so they were just wondering if I was leaving. I'm not.
All right.
Well,
He was going to the
officer was
back.
talking, and he was his forum, really. And his questions were, you took over from him.
Okay.
So I'm so old, I forget my questions for the officer.
All right. So back to this. So the point is that I think if I were a White Center resident, area Y resident, I would say that you're going to have a voice. The city is very progressive. We're very thoughtful. We value our schools. We understand the community values. And we try to build governance around that. In the county, you're a very, very, very small part of a very large organization. And I'm not going to say been abused or anything, but I think to some extent this community is being neglected. And it's just not fair to think that as large a component as this would be of here and that it would continue to be neglected. This council takes great pride in being responsive. A lot of times I don't agree with where they go, but at the end of the day, they generally make pretty good decisions, and I think they do reflect the community. So that's my best answer. One of the things I noticed after the first annexation was it was very difficult to convince people that they had a right to have a vision. And I mean, really, like, this is what we want to do. You get to do this, right? And having them articulate that vision was like pulling teeth. And to this day, I think we're still working on that. I'll give you another really great example. Puget Sound Park, all right? Before we did that first annexation, it was sold not once, not twice, but 3 times. It was sold. And the city of Burien and some other people intervened actively and said you can't do that. But it was interesting to me that the county had simply come in and said, we're going to put low-income housing here. Game over. No, that one didn't work out. We're going to put a fire station here. Sorry about your park. No, that didn't work out. We're going to put a library. That would never happen in the city of Burien. It would not happen because the city of Burien is going to go out and go, okay, we think we ought to put a fire station here. What do you guys think? And then we go into this often laborious process where we're sampling the community, trying to figure this out. And the council listens to all that and they make a decision. And so I would say that is the real, I say you get a governing body that really cares. I gave this gentleman my card beforehand. My card has my direct number on it. I'm not a secretary, not a department head, it's my number. And that's how we operate. We've got 2 council members here tonight. If you had a community meeting or something like this in Seattle, would you expect to see 2 council members and an executive there? So I think those are things we'll consider. Yes, sir.
I have a question, because you went through your last annexation, well, actually it was January, there was a meeting on the boundary review board. And in this room, and one lady got up and had a part under oath, basically gave testimony that only 1,380 people voted for annexation in area X, this is that. And since then, there's so many unhappy people in that area that she had a stack of petitions, 2,000 people signed, wanting to leave the area. How do you reconcile that? Because that in itself tells me to get 2,000 petitions out of the population, like 14,000 total?
Yeah.
That's pretty big, so how do you explain that?
That wasn't this room when I was here, and that's not what you said. So to start with that, good answer. The annexation requires 50% plus 1 of the people who vote on it. So I don't know what the number was. I believe it was 55%. And in fairness, it wasn't when my assistant here was with me last time. But I worked for a year with these kinds of meetings going out, and it was not a mandate, right? It was 55%. People were very skeptical about that. I entirely disagree with the characterization of people that happens to the contrary of everything else. Further, in 2000, I have in my hand the names of 500 members of the Communist Party. It was nonsense. There was a petition that was circulated 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that was largely house-to-house in the Three Tree area, people who opposed annexation. I think it was 1,518. It had nothing to do with area life, 0. And if she was holding a petition, that was the one because I think she helped circulate. Next question. Yes, sir.
For the officer, will this change
I can't let him talk.
Huh?
Hey.
I hear you, man. Oh, what did there? did good though. How will this, if at all, affect 911 response and fire response?
Okay, well, I cannot speak for the fire department, but for 911 responses, nothing changes. It still goes through, we work through the same dispatch center of the King County Sheriff's Office as the people that work in North Highline. So you will have more resources available at any given time for the city of Burien with an annexation. My minimum staffing right now in the city of Burien is 4 to 6 officers working. The minimum staffing in the North Highline area is 2. And what happens is those 2 then become part of my 6 or 4 or 5. Or, so now we have, we could have 8 to 9 people that are out working at any given time that can respond to those 911 calls. Now, in cases of emergency, you will see, and if you've lived here for a while, you will see SeaTac cars coming into North Highline. You will see Burien cars going into North Highline. If you're in Burien, you're going to see King County cars going into Burien. You're going to see SeaTac cars going into Burien. So we're part of a bigger, kind of a bigger organization here. But
So we're just going to be routed like we're going to go 911 Burien?
It's going to be 911, King County Sheriff's Office, where you're going to report, and then it's going to dispatch a Burien police officer to whatever the call is.
Your concern before was that it would go like the dispatch Smith, and Smith would go to
Yes.
Jones, and
No,
Jones
no,
would
no.
go.
Yeah. Now then you kind of clarify that, and I just want to know if there's any effect. And then of course, on fire response will be important
Right.
to me.
Right. And fire response is always out of what's called Valleycom, and that's not changing either. It's part of, Burien and North Highline Fire have worked together contractually for a very long time.
Well, I did look at the maps. See, like, you got fire stations. I know you got one up here towards White Center. You got one over 128th. I don't know, are they all falling within?
Yes. The question was, what happens to the fire? So what will happen is that Fire District 2 moves by law. There are fire district for the home department here. It is annexes North. Fire District 2 comes with us. So it'll have the same station, same rates, most likely the same firefighters respond.
Thank you. You have a question, sir?
If you're, you have a business card?
Yes, I do.
What happens if this doesn't go through?
The question was, what happens if this doesn't go through? And the answer is several things could happen. Nothing, game over, the area remains unincorporated. Likely that if that were the case, because of the sales tax credit I mentioned, the $5 million a year for 10 years that the state gives us, that runs out in 2015. If no annexation occurs before then, it's going to stay unincorporated for a long time.
Seattle's not going to jump in there.
They haven't said that they were going to do that, like immediately. There's a theory that goes that they can do it through an interlocal agreement, and it's true they can. But I think as a practical matter, for them to annex via a vote, I just don't see a vote annexation happening in the near future. The other thing that could happen is the council could say it's pretty close, we want to go out again. And you often see that in school levies, you see the fire district in South County. So that's also a possibility. Or as I say, nothing. Yes.
Didn't the County Council want to get rid of all those pockets of unincorporated areas?
The question was, did the King County Council want to get rid of all these pockets of unincorporated areas? The answer is yes. By law, the Growth Management Act of 1992 contemplated having all of these rural areas that really aren't behaving in a rural way. I mean, this ain't the country anymore, folks. It's urban. And the county can afford to provide services, and they've said they're going to reduce services over a period of time. So yes, the county would like to see this area become part of one city or the other. And there are several, I think there's 9 annexation areas throughout King County that are targeted to become a part of cities. And the Growth Management Act contemplated that would happen within the next few years. Christine?
I have a letter here from the Department of Revenue from the state of Washington. And we've had this discussion before, and I would appreciate it if you would come out and talk to my 2 questions at the end. From the Department of Revenue, we sent them a letter and asked if it was true that we would automatically get $5 million. answer is unilaterally no. There is a formula, and there's a basis for how it's calculated. Their projection in this letter is that, and this is based on the 2011 revenues, that you could get 4.3, which is about in line with what Bert projected that you would be able to get, okay? So that comes from that. So that means that if you're basing this on 5 million, you're short some, and you already know that you're short some from how much you're going to take in for property taxes. Lloyd Harris already told you that.
So I can,
So, excuse me.
well, I thought you might be responding.
No. Let me get to the questions, okay, because there's two. One that means that you're going to have a shortfall of what you planned on having, that's
Well, we
clear.
won't, but your next question is pretty,
Okay,
dependent on that, the answer is no to the first one.
So the next question is, how do you plan to meet that shortfall with what the things you said you deliver are going to be? And the second thing is, I live in Burien, I'm a citizen of Burien, and the rule on annexation is, during the time of the annexation, 10 years, you can't have your services reduced in this area. So if there is a shortfall, and that's a requirement, you must keep it at the same level or at a better level. That's the rule. So if there's a shortfall, okay, is that shortfall going to be taken over in the city of Burien? Because services are going to have to go down someplace and taxes some. So what is the plan when you don't bring in the revenues that you plan on bringing in?
Okay, excellent. If you believe the first part, that'd be an excellent question.
This is the matter of the first part.
So I haven't seen the letter. This goes back to that whole, you won't get the $5 million business. So, if I understood what I heard in the first part of that, you get $5 million back, but the Department of Revenue says we're only getting $4.3 million in the same period. That's true. Ta-da! When you annex, there's another $833,000 that comes from the White Center area for a total of 5.1 to 5.3. I'm sorry, we just misinformed or misinterpreted the facts. So there will be a shortfall. We don't anticipate there's going to be a shortfall. And if there was, we deal with it in the same way we would deal with the shortfall in the city. Questions? I'm sorry, Justin, that's enough. Are there any other questions? Mark?
Yes,
We're going to do Barb, so we're going to go anti-pro and anti-Barb.
So I was just talking with Joe McDermott's office today, because our neighborhood parks are in really bad shape. And I know that we passed, and all residents of King County passed the regional parks levy several years ago, which is only money that goes to regional parks like Steve Cox and Marybrook parks. But there's no other levy that goes to our neighborhood parks. There's not park levies. And so, and so, so the neighborhood parks are being neglected, and what Joe's office told me is they're living along, they don't have money to improve them or basically do any maintenance of parks. So could you tell me, and I know that parents have a lot of good work with the parks and the annex areas, so what is the plan for the parks in the area to be in?
Okay, so in full disclosure, Mark is a strong member of the anti-Barb, is a strong member of the pro. So the question was, what is Burien's plan for the parks? So first of all, I think the best thing, the most descriptive thing we can say is we would do pretty much, we try to do what we did in the first annexation where we took over 5 parks. Burien isn't going to go out and rebuild or buy a whole bunch of new parks. It ain't going to happen. But in the first annexation, what we did was we improved signage, we stripped out blackberry bushes, we brushed out a whole bunch of stuff, we fixed bollards. In the case of Puget Sound Park at 128th and 1st, we got a community development block grant for $128,000, give or take. And we built new improvements there for the kids, did some ADA stuff. We would like to do much more. I think you would see similar improvements in the parks in the annexation area. I can guarantee you we're not going to go in there and rebuild. We can't. We don't have that kind of money. Nobody does as far as I know. Steve Cox is a very special park that is supported by a regional levy. It's up in 2013 or something. I'll be talking with the county about how that park transitions The other two parks that are area wide, Lakewood and Shorewood. So there's Lakewood, Shorewood, and Steve Cox.
White Center Heights.
White Center Heights would continue to be maintained pretty much as they have been. We go in, we clean them up, and do whatever it is that we think is needed to make them safe. And that's probably the extent of what we would do in the short term. When the economy turns around, we all think it has to. We just can't go on like this. We're going to see our sales tax increase. We're going to see our property tax increase, and we'll then have more discretionary money to do stuff with. Okay, Mark, you had a question?
Well, I wanted to share, I was given this packet by some residents of the area that was annexed previously, city council member. And they wrote this article, there's some photos in here, and it's basically that in their area, there have been a number of foreclosures. And the foreclosures, the banks have not, one of the responsibilities of the banks is that if they foreclose on a house, they have to keep it looking nice as long as they have possession when they get the house back. And there are a multitude of these houses in this area, the area that you're in annexed, which have not been kept up. And these neighbors all say, look, it's lowering the value of properties all around this mess, and that the city of Burien seemed to be, the description was lazy, and they weren't following up. They weren't putting pressure on the banks to keep their responsibility. And the point of this letter is they even went on to say that Burien, there's several Burien municipal codes that require that these houses are cleaned up, that these banks who own them are not cleaning these houses up. And it made me think, well, if this is what these neighbors got in the first annexation, is this what we can expect?
What do you have
So
now?
that's the question.
What do you have now?
I know that the house was foreclosed on 2 blocks away is clean and nice because the bank came in and did it.
Does Burien have a code enforcement officer?
Yeah.
This will cure that, they do.
Yeah.
I don't know, so that's the reason I'm asking.
Yeah, let me return to that issue additionally. So I think Mark's theme of this question was these are hard times, people are losing their houses, banks are taking care of it, what does the state Burien do? Right?
No, I think the question is that Burien has regulatory authority to put pressure on the banks who own a multitude of these homes to clean them up. But it appears that Burien is unwilling to use his regulatory authority to say to Chase Bank and Bank of America, you owe it to all of us to clean these homes up. You have it in possession. You owe it to us to clean them up. Okay. You can close those banks. You can take their license away for a year. And watch how quickly Chase will jump and solve your problem.
I'll try to take Chase's license. So it sounds like not a question, more of a statement. This gentleman asked, what about code enforcement? So we do have code enforcement, and this is something I've learned about the community. So code enforcement, if your neighbor's got a junk car and you hate it, you could call up and say, my neighbor's got a junk car, or it's in violation of the city code, or my neighbor's got grass that's growing too high, or any number of things. And when we took over the first annexation, I was all gung-ho, and I had this plan. And the plan was, I'm going to go in there and just bring this place out. I'm going to go in there with code enforcement. We're just going to hammer it. I had plans to bring in dumpsters and do all kinds of things. And the older residents of that area took me aside. They said, you know what? That junk car over in that guy's driveway may be junk to that neighbor, but it's probably a 16-year-old son's project that he's going to do with his old man in high school. Go careful on that. And in our own community of Burien, we discovered that the community has a great deal of tolerance, and in fact prefers us not to be overactive in code enforcement. We respond to things that are egregious, that have public health implications, or unsafe for any other reason, or if they just can't be resolved by any other method. The first question I ask when somebody calls up, when I get the call about my neighbor's fence or something, have you talked to the neighbor? And if I understand that the neighbor has not been, they haven't communicated, I'm out. Because I believe that government should be the last resort. And if we can't accomplish these things within the community without the heavy-handed government coming in and enforcing, and we generally feel that that has served our community very well. And I get nothing, You know, it's something I had to kind of warm up to because I'm kind of a buy the book kind of guy. And we have a policy of not going out and looking for stuff. We wait for things that can't be resolved by any other method, and then we fix it. We have a very active graffiti program where we will actually paint out graffiti for free. We will paint out the graffiti for free. On commercial property or private properties where we don't have that kind of authority, we will provide free paint. And so we are very interested in the way the community looks. We are also anxious to respect the community's preference about what they can tolerate. Is that Mr.
Excuse me, but I live in Walter Park. I really don't see any code enforcement. The Burien County, I see none at all.
It's not happening.
Burien is much preferable.
It's already bad. They can only get better when you're in it.
My larger concern is what's going to happen if we don't go to jail. I see loss of services. I see people will be have gun held or hit by King County. They don't want us. They're saying, expect to lose, you know, you're going to lose you're going to lose officers, we're going to lose services. I mean, that's what you're going to expect because they don't want us. What's the alternative? All right, if we don't go with their in, maybe we get to be part of South Seattle. Do you really want to be the southern part of Seattle? Let me ask you that.
But I hear what you're saying. First of all, Seattle's not annexed.
Well,
So, I mean, in fairness,
it's a possibility.
It's a possibility. It's not the one we're dealing with right now. So, I won't say it doesn't exist, but I'm saying that right at the moment that's not, you know. So, the county is saying we don't have the money to provide the service. You know why elections are on Tuesdays? It's because the dates when the counties were put together, most people had to ride horses to get to the election, and they didn't want to ride them on Sundays, right? That's fact. And the whole county system was based around a strategy that was not urban, right? It was rural. And rural folks have a different way of doing stuff. And you don't have quite the crime, you don't have the expectation for the roads. Schools are a whole different ball of wax. So I think that they're honestly saying we've come to a time when we cannot support urban services. You know, I think that fortunately they would love to keep it, but I think what they're saying is, look, we just don't have the money. And I know that that's the truth in the unincorporated areas. At Graffiti in Boulevard Park, there's an individual who has been sending us memos with like 12 or 15 sightings of graffiti. Gil, where's Gil? Gil is also very active on graffiti. We get to it as well as we can. We know there's this one tagger we know on the street, we know his tags, we've got 31 out every night, something like that. And we do our best. We'll never be perfect, but I guarantee you we're a lot better than we would otherwise be. But I apologize for that. And we do have a way of reporting that, so it's not getting reported and staying around. Contact me afterwards. I'll tell you how to do that. Bill, since we're on graffiti now,
I'm Bill Burien. Realized looking through the documents today, stuff I've written. I've been going to meetings since July 17, 2012, annexation. And my question is tonight, and I am for annexation here. I got this letter in the mail. You see this letter, you know where this property resides, where is it?
So Bill is holding up a letter that I think I'm told was circulated in the annexation area. Yeah. So yeah, I'm aware of it. I don't know if anybody else has seen it or not. I don't know what to say about it. It's a letter from an individual who claims his property was damaged. I actually looked up the project. It was a project that was built in 2005. It was not a city project, it was a county project. The city was putting a small drain under the road. The county was putting a large drain under the road. So the city gave the county $60,000 to include our project in their larger project. We didn't do it.
Where is
It's so it's right as you're going up Amblon, just before you get to the S curves. It's a 12th goes straight up there.
That's
So it's that trailer park right there.
That's the place where the process has never been taken care of for the
I
last,
don't know.
graffiti on the building.
I don't know the man.
And that wants me to overpass.
Well, yeah, I don't know what to
Properties
say.
in the city.
I don't know what to say about the letter. It's one of those things.
Is there a length lawn grass?
Is there a
How long can you have your lawn for your grass?
How long is your lawn now?
I like a long lawn.
I do too. There's a good reason to ask. You know, I think it's the only time we ever. I've heard people say you can't prune your trees. You can't. It's none of that. If you have grass literally that's this high and it's brown and it's against a wooden building, we're going to come out and talk with you because some teenager smoking cigarettes. That's what we're interested in. We don't care how. You know, this is if the neighborhood is okay with grass that's this high and it's not a public safety hazard. We don't care. We don't want to get involved in it. We do want to fix the graffiti in Boulevard Park. We're not interested in telling how long to keep your lawn.
What about goats for yard maintenance?
I had 36 goats in my yard for 3 weeks when I first moved here.
They weren't your goats.
They weren't. I rented them. No, it was,
They weren't that time.
no, it was a guy who lived got hired by.
If I wanted to get 2 goats for pets, I pets and use them for yard maintenance, could I do that?
You're allowed. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but one of my neighbors recently got 3 goats, so I'm going out on a limb here.
I don't want to get 2.
I won't bite off more than I can
I
chew.
got a 10 for 2.
Okay, if you call me, I'll verify, but we do allow goats. I don't know if it's 2 or 1. I would advise staking them out rather than killing them.
They got what?
You stake them out, that way they can roam.
Well, but they would be put in the pen at night, and then I would take them out.
I think you're okay with the goats, but if you call me, I'll verify for you.
I don't have a calendar. You got a bed start?
Yeah. My neighbor, two houses down from me, has 3 goats right now. And I literally did have 36 goats in my backyard. So I got to know my neighbors. It's the first 2 days I came to do it.
Thank you.
On the subject of the letter, I received a letter, I think on the back that is complaining. Okay, that's fine. Question. King County or anybody previously did infrastructure work in their realm, and it becomes annexed, you become Burien. Does Burien accept the responsibility of their failure? How are we going to fix it?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is it depends. If it's big, what I try to do when I negotiate with the county, particularly on the area that we're about to annex, I'm going to get language included that says that reduces us from, indemnifies us from any major liability for deficient work on projects. But you were talking about a drain, a fairly long drain.
Yes.
You know, something like that we just wouldn't catch. If it was, if the county did the project years ago, I would say the city here would be responsible.
They would be.
I don't think so. And, you know, this community is more than 100 years old. And that's why our streets have got all those crazy angles to them. They're not all 90 degrees. There's all kinds of funky stuff going on in this community, including construction projects that weren't built properly. And, you know, as long as we just keep chipping away at them, improving them, they're going to get better. We're not going to fix them all at once. Somebody pointed out that there's, you know, $70, $80 million worth of stuff that needs to be fixed in the area backlog of capital projects. The city of Burien's got $50, $60 million. Every city has it. You keep chipping away at this stuff, and every time you do it, you try to make it right. You try to build it to a current standard, which causes its own problems because it's generally more expensive. But you just do it bit by bit by bit. But I would say, to direct answer to your question, the city would probably be liable for that.
What's Burien's plan for the $5 million? Going to go back into this tax area, or
The question was, what happens to the $5 million in the state sales tax credit? Does it come back into the area, or does it go somewhere else? So by law, that $5 million has to go back into the area. The more complicated or nuanced answer is, when you belong to a city, you have a general fund, you have a bunch of other little funds, but the general fund is what pays for the cops, for example. So the real easy math, the number of cops we're going to have to hire from the county, they're just the people who are basically working up here now, they're changing uniforms. But the number of cops in the police services we're going to have to hire from the new city of Burien are going to cost about $5 million. So easiest way to think of it, and I've answered the question this way before, we're going to have a lot more than $5 million worth of expenditures up here. But, you know, dollar for dollar, you can think of the $5 million coming from the state directly paying for police service. It's more complicated than that because $5 million is going to help, you know, pay for my staff, you know, all kinds of things. But the money has to stay, will be primarily, you know, directed towards the annexation area. They don't want to give a city $5 million to help them get help. You know, they want to give it to encourage work in the area that they're in. Justin.
This is for the police chief. Okay. The police services are not going to go down in King County for this area. The sheriff came and said that they're going to stay the same with the annex or no annex. But what is the new piece that just came out is that the sheriff says he's putting down 14 more deputies. And I wonder if you know how he's going to distribute those deputies to Area Y. And if those deputies come to Area Y, when Burien, if this were to go to Burien annexation, will those new deputies still stay, even though they're going to have a different budget, or will those deputies that disappear? Do you know what's happening with those 14 deputies?
You know, I can't tell you exactly what. Part of the 14 deputies is hiring back people that we had to let go. And this is out of overtime savings because we did a reorganization of the sheriff's office into a new kind of deployment. That new kind of deployment was what caused our staffing to be reduced in Skyway and down here and in some of the areas. And we have all these pockets of unincorporated area that are generally surrounded by cities. And so we have to distribute those out to try to fill those needs that they have. We have National Island and Skyway, areas of Federal Way. The 14 are basically bringing us back up to strength. And I don't know what his plan is for that. I couldn't even begin to guess. I have heard nothing about trying to increase staffing in any of the areas. It's really to fill the holes that we have now because we are understaffed. It's a trade-off. If we have more officers out there, then we're paying less in overtime for these officers that have to work 12 and 14 and 16 hours a day because we don't have enough people to work. And that's just in our current state. That's not anything interesting, just our current state.
Scott, would you repeat the previous meeting you were talking about positions the department has lost over the past 2 years as opposed to positions lost over the city period?
Right, I did mention that before. Yeah, we've lost roughly 140 deputy positions over the last 3 years through county budget problems. And that's what caused us to have to do this redeployment of our resources. With that redeployment came a lot of overtime. In order to just keep what we call staffing minimums, we had to have officers, we had to order officers after their 8-hour shift to work another 4 hours. We had to order sergeants to do the same thing. With this new deployment, we reduced our minimum staffing levels throughout the county, and we were able to save money on that overtime. And with that saving, that's what the council has said. Because of that saving, we're going to give you 14 positions back out of this 140 that we've lost. Now, there might be some other nuance there, and I just don't know the answer to it. But, yes, sir.
So what you're saying is that if we do go with Burien, that they're going to be able to have the easier job of distributing the police services as a result of being with Burien?
I will have more resources that are dedicated to the bigger city. And so instead of having, what I've got now is 4 in the city of Burien or 6 in the city of Burien, and there's 2 that work out here plus the storefront officer, I will now have 8 or 9 officers that work for the entire city of Burien. And it's up to wherever the issue is, wherever the problem is, for us to be able to dedicate those resources. That also includes a gang unit. That also includes the detective units. I have about 12 detectives right now, which will increase. So that part of it is, yes, I would say that I have a better ability, and my officers and supervisors have a better ability to set resources where they're.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add to that, I've been here 6 years, never laid off a problem. Not one. notwithstanding what you heard in the first part of the meeting, it ain't gonna happen. It's not. And I'd like to add, there are 29 cities, some number of cities that contract with the sheriff's department.
I was only 12 cities.
We're either the first or second largest. And I've never been in a city that had contract police department. I love it. But it's much easier to manage. It's a lot more efficient. We have access to bomb squads and helicopters, you name it. But the point I really wanted to make was about a year ago or a year and a half ago, I wanted to understand many of the things the county does, they do wonderfully, some of them not so good. Roads, for example, we find out that they cost 30 to 50% more for road projects than we do. We do it a lot cheaper. So we did an audit of the sheriff's department. Scott was in that audit. We had people from the sheriff's department. We had rank and file people from the cops. We had my staff. We hired professional consultants. And we found out they're a pretty good deal. And combined with the fact that they're so easy to manage, it gave us a really, it made me feel like, okay, we're good with this for at least another 5 years. And that is one of the reasons that we can do this annexation as well as we can. Because I don't have to go out and hire 25 or 30 cops. They're there already. And that is one of the reasons that we can do this fairly seamlessly. And that is a truly unique situation. And this is a very extraordinary relationship. I think only rivaled by some cities and counties in California. And that's the truth. So we're kind of this real specialty here that makes this possible.
And what you're saying is that there's really no guarantees that King County is going to keep the local level of enforcement. I mean, it depends on.
We don't know. We can't.
33 years in King County government.
He survived it.
It worries me when I hear in the news that, well, we have to, that King County is going to have to reduce it. That's what I'm hearing.
You know what? I'll tell you, I hear that too. I don't think the sky is falling, but I think things are degrading. I don't believe when I hear like the world is going to turn black, the cops are going to go away, the streets are going to turn to dust. They may over time, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. And so I think in fairness, it's fair to say that we have been told by the county that services will continue to degrade year by year by year, but they will never get better, they will get worse. But in terms of like, well, what happens tomorrow, it's not mayhem in the streets, but it's not a good picture.
Like I said, I'm not really worried about Laurel, I'm worried about down the road.
Yeah, no, I think down the road there's serious concern. That's the other thing.
I have several thoughts. One of them is that pre-Burien, this area was all highline. And then Burien became one, and then we have highline. And then we annexed, and now we have Burien and highline. And all this other little area wants to do is become Burien and stay highline. We're all one community. So that's my thought there, is that we shop and we visit, and all of our activities are in this one pre-highline area. So that's that part. My next thought is that on budgets, people are worried about the budget, but every household has a budget. We want a new roof, we want new paint, we want repairs, we want new rugs. We can't do it all at one time. Same with the city budget when we become part of Burien. All of our dreams are, new sidewalks or new roads, new whatever. It's not going to happen the next day. You have to budget for those things. So.
Well, yeah, I think that the message for everybody here is we can afford to do this. It's revenue neutral. It's going to be okay. The city is not going to go far from it. Council is exercising their discretion. These are hard times. We could raise taxes by fiat. The council could say, they have the authority to do that in one specific area. We've lost $850,000 a year in property tax. Never happened in my career where property values fell so much. And, so I'm looking at this big gaping hole in my budget, and the council's going, you know what? It's tight for everybody out there.
Right.
Let's use our fund balance for a couple of years, and then we'll see what happens, all right? And, I may disagree with that as a bureaucrat, but it's a solid decision, it's well-reasoned, and I respect it. So,
Right. The budget, things are going to happen like that, but you have a budget, you adjust budgets, you put into the budget. The next much one thing. Burien property taxes and unincorporated King County property taxes. The residents of Burien pay property taxes. The unincorporated people in King County would pay property taxes. So what they're each inputting into the pot is kind of a wash. We would, contribute, they contribute. We would give ideas, they give ideas. So it's not like we can't afford us because we would be putting in the same amount as Burien is putting in residents. And then the last thing is that another thing to help Burien would be there's a big B&O tax base in White Center that would be a plus to Burien.
Yeah, so that was not really a question either, an interesting point. What does it mean to a city to have two business districts? How do those cooperate? How do they play together? What sort of synergy can we create from that? Something that we have not had the opportunity to look at, nor has this area ever looked at. But I think there's tremendous opportunity there. I really do. And it's not because one is so much stronger than the other. I think there are two unique business districts that together have a lot of potential. And I want to make one other point because this is important to me and some of my council members. I know the vision that the city has acknowledges that we can't achieve the vision that we have without future generations leading the kids, leading the schools. And my council has been very interested in making sure that the schools are the best they can be. We have a brand new school superintendent. Rose has met with her. I've met with her. I think there's an enormous potential here that we have never had before to do something very different. And I've been in these schools in this area. I know what these schools are. I talked to all the principals. And I think I'm in the same way that I'm excited about how the business districts might create synergy. I'm excited about the possibility for the kids. And I got a 4-year-old who I was planning on putting through Gregory Heights and all the rest of that stuff. So I have a personal interest in this. But just think about it. If we don't improve our graduation rate, if we don't improve the level of reading in 3rd grade at White Center Elementary, we're lost. We can do all the economic development we want, we will never change what it is that needs to be changed to. And I know my council, to varying degrees, believes that as well. But we see a lot of potential up here. And so we have our own selfish reasons as well to want to partner. Yes, they're 7 o'clock, the 1st, 3rd, and 4th Tuesdays of each month. Mondays. I was trying to throw you off some. We got great entertainment recently. We had dogs. So they're on Mondays at 7 o'clock.
7 p.m.
1st, 3rd, and 4th.
And so that's a good time for us because we can attend those meetings and give you our input.
Yes, this is a public comment. All right, this is the only time I get to do something. And further, we do have streaming video, so you can watch it that night on your computer, or you can watch it on Channel 21 the next day. And we also archive it. We also have agendas. When you go into the agenda, you click on the item you're interested in. It'll take you right to that part of the video, so you don't have to sit through the whole thing. But public comment is at the beginning of the meeting, so you don't have to wait till the end if you want to talk. So, thank you, Eric. Rose is the deputy mayor, and she just said that she would really enjoy hearing from people at council meetings after annexation and encourage everyone to come and address council. Councilmember Petroviak?
And I really encourage open and transparent government. And so whether you're current resident or not, I'm more than happy to meet anyone after the meeting and share my thoughts with you. Thank you.
Yes, just to put a point of clarification, it's general's facts about how many people voted in the King County election to the next month. I think it's 1,000. And before, sure that for handicapped people, it's easier for them to get in.
Does anybody, no, there is. It's okay. So, we're past the 1 hour, and there's a football game on. Does anybody else have any final closing remarks?